Well, Razorback fans, there was some big news for Razorback basketball. Didn't have anything to do with the game, but had to be with just a casual, another 5-star committing to the Razorbacks. So let's talk about it on today's Locked On Razorbacks podcast.
You are Locked On Razorbacks, your daily podcast on the Arkansas Razorbacks, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. I am your host, John Neighbors. I'm also the host of Inside Arkansas Live, which you can catch every weekday starting at noon on Inside Arkansas and InsideArkansas.com. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You can start the season with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets. If your first $5 bet wins, visit FanDuel.com today to get started. Hope everybody's having a wonderful Tuesday. Big news with Razorback basketball. So might as well talk to the basketball ball knower himself, Curtis Wilkerson, who's joining us here today on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. And Curtis will just jump right into it. Meleek Thomas, another 5-star. This one, I mean, anytime you get a 5-star is always going to be great, but this one seems to be a pretty special one for John Calipari for next season.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, this is a big deal, and say what you want about John Calipari, the coach, but there's no questioning John Calipari, the recruiter, and that's not going to change now that he's at Arkansas with that Tyson NIL money, right? So, yeah, Meleek Thomas, this is a big get for Arkansas. Another 5-star. He's a top 10 player nationally, and that's pretty much unanimous across the board with all those recruiting services. Really talented player, competes on both ends of the floor. He will talk a little trash, but he backs it up, and that's what I love about him. He's kind of got that gamer, that fiery competitiveness that I think Razorback fans, it'll be really endearing to them. Big time creator on offense, man. This is a dude who can get his shot off in a variety of ways, create separation. He's got deep range from three. And I know that that gets people's ears perked up a little bit, given the 3-point shooting for the Razorbacks. So, man, it's a big get for Cal. And now you've got just kind of your backcourt for the future. It's looking really bright because Darius Acuff, who's been committed since the summer, Meleek Thomas, those are literally two of the very best guards in a 2025 class that is loaded, quite frankly.
So comparatively speaking to Cal, so far, at least here at Arkansas, we know that he's had some 5-stars already commit for this that's playing on this year's team, and he's got one for next year, and even has some currently on the team that as a transfer portal, they were 5-stars coming out of high school. So just given all the 5-stars that are either currently on the Razorback roster or future Razorbacks, where would you say Meleek Thomas ranks among all of those high-level McDonald All-American caliber players?
He's up there, man. He really is. I like on 24/7 Sports, they have just kind of like the all-time commitment rankings on there. And if you go check that out, Meleek Thomas, I don't know how quickly they update those after these commitments, but he's going to be one of the top 3-4, in that all-time category in the modern era. So he'll probably slot in maybe right behind, like Al Jefferson and Nick Smith, for example. But it's a good problem to have, man. And I think the 2025 class is viewed as stronger overall than 2024. And then if you go look at those 3 guys that they have, like Boogie Fland was kind of the headliner of that class, and he was right in that 20-ish range in terms of rankings overall. And so you're thinking about a better class, a deeper class in 2025. And then here's Meleek Thomas as high as 7th. In some of these rankings. So a big time player. And now, I mean, this is kind of shaping up to be one of those vintage John Calipari backcourts that just has dynamite, like lottery type talent, freshman guards. And yeah, I mean, they'll have to kind of build some things around them. We'll see who returns and who they wind up getting from the transfer portal or whatever. But in terms of sheer talent, you're going to be hard pressed to find a freshman backcourt duo that's going to be better than what Arkansas has next season.
I hate to kind of put you on the spot, but it's a question I feel like is always very relatable to people who may not know the intricacies of basketball and skill level and everything. But for Meleek Thomas, is there a particular player, a pro player now or in history or whatever, that you could maybe compare him to for Razorback fans so they'd be like, okay, this is the type of style and the type of player that they're getting next season?
Yeah, that's a tough one right off the top. But I mean, like I said, he's got just kind of some of that swagger about him a little bit. So you think about the flair that like Caliph Battle played with, different types of players, but you're going to kind of get some of that this intensity that comes from him. And then just, he does some ridiculous things. He's fundamentally sound. But if you go watch, at Overtime Elite, they do this thing called King of the Court, which is just like a one-on-one competition between their players. And he wins that thing. And just some of the, like the one-footed fadeaway runners that he hits and the off the dribble step back stuff from three. I mean, it's high level stuff. So I don't know off the top. I'm especially trying to think about Razorbacks who he can compare to. But it's tricky because he does have a pretty unique blend and skill set. What I will say is he's a little bit more polished, I think, offensively coming in than some of these high-end freshman guards that you have had in the past when it comes to just shot creation and shot making overall. Anthony Black was great. Meleek Thomas is advanced as a scorer from him. Same thing with, it's hard to say with Nick Smith because he was injured. But even going back to like the Moses Moody year, those guys all had some things that translate to the NBA, but in terms of sheer bucket getting ability and competitiveness, he's right up there at the top.
Speaking with Curtis Wilkerson of Inside Arkansas here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. So Curtis, also, looking at everything that you've said about him and the high level, I mean, he's got options and had options to go anywhere in the country. And I know NIL plays a huge factor into it, but there's a lot of schools that can provide a lot of NIL, especially for a high level player like this. But why do you feel like he chose Cal and Arkansas? Was it simply NIL? Was it simply, hey, Cal puts guys in the NBA? I mean, what about Arkansas and Calipari made this particular high level player say, of all the schools, this is where I want to be?
Yeah, I mean, all of the above there. That relationship with John Calipari has gone back a long time, back to when he was at Kentucky. And you just build those bonds and that trust, and it matters. And then you think about a guy who's been, kind of balling out with Overtime Elite. And we obviously know that Cal has some very strong connections with that program and a history there. Yes, Arkansas has plenty of NIL money, and it's hard to deny the track record with Cal. I mean, you look at it, and he just churns out NBA prospects at a rate that nobody has ever done before. And that matters to these kids who are being sold on a lot of different things in the recruiting process. And a lot of people can say things and they can have a vision for you, but he can just go and say, oh, hang on 1 second, Meleek. I got Devin Booker's calling me real quick. Or, oh yeah, I just got off the phone with Anthony Davis. Oh, did you see what Shai did the other day? Like, I mean, the examples that you can lay out there that are real and tangible are hard to beat. But ultimately, that was a big part of what got Cal over the top here. In addition to the relationship that they have, because you're right, man, a lot of suitors, obviously Pitt, the hometown school, you always have to keep an eye on that. But you're talking about UConn, the back-to-back national champions, were the other finalists that was involved there. Alabama, who just went to a Final Four that has a really, really fun style of play. They were in the mix on him as well. And so, it's just, we talked about how John Calipari, there's something about him on the recruiting trail, a little bit of aura about him, and that track record, man, it's hard to beat. And it's a good problem for Arkansas to have. Talent on the roster is never going to be in question as long as he's in Fayetteville.
So you got Meleek Thomas, and you also have Darius Acuff, 2 5-star players. And we know that Cal has said previously he's usually 3, maybe 4 high school players. So after getting these 2 huge commits, what's kind of the next move or the next step or the future holding for who else could be coming aboard for Arkansas and Cal?
Yeah, I think they would really like to add a front court piece into this class if they could. And there's, 2 different guys that you could look at right now, maybe 3. Caleb Wilson, obviously we've talked about him a lot. This, again, relationships matter, and it goes deep with Cal and his family. But you got to get him on campus. And he was scheduled to visit Arkansas when they had their exhibition at TCU, and then he wound up postponing it because they were gone for their exhibition with TCU. Maybe they were trying to fit it in later in the weekend. It didn't work out. So if you get that visit scheduled, then you have a chance there. You're going to be in a dogfight with Kentucky, though. That's interesting, obviously, for reasons that we don't have to get into. But between him and, Chris Sinek is another one, a top 10 5-star. He's up at Link Academy in Branson. He's already visited. He's got another like hometown recruitment with LSU, who he just visited. So we're kind of keeping an eye on that. But, LSU, Houston's in there, Tennessee's in there. Arkansas very much in the mix as well. If they could get one of those guys, I think they'd be pretty pumped about it. Otherwise, for big men, you're kind of looking at maybe a reclassification from 2026, which Mika Murinen, the Finland sensation, is a guy who's already visited. People think he might reclassify up. but you just never know how those things are going to work. Then get one of those big men, they'd be happy about it. And then a couple wings to keep an eye on. Nate Ament, who is he's ranked actually higher than any of the guys they have committed right now. 6'9" wing, big time shooter. He's going to be a late signing period guy. So keeping an eye on maybe playing the long game with him. Can you get him on campus for a visit? Fendolf, Duke, and others. Either him or maybe Shana Bayev, who has already visited. 6'7" lefty, one of the best pure scorers in the 2025 class. Not a 5-star yet, but he jumped up about 10, 12 spots in all the rankings updates. I think he's a guy when it's all said and done, could be a 5-star.
All right, last one for let you get out of here, Curtis. For those who know, because following football, the early signing period and when you can actually officially sign that letter of intent. As far as the timeline for these particular players, but anybody from this particular class of 2025, what's the earliest they can sign, and what kind of is that process going to look like in the basketball side of things?
Yeah, I mean that process opens up here in the next couple of days, and the window's open for fewer than 2 weeks. So anybody, like, you can commit at any time, but if you want to get these guys signed, and it doesn't really take them off the books in terms of recruiting because there are ways to circumvent that, but it's pretty widely respected within the coaching circles that if a guy actually signs, you leave him alone. And so we'll see about that. Does Acuff and Meleek Thomas, those guys go ahead and sign and just make that official? And then it's a lot of times it's where you can see multiple other commitments, because guys, really, this is about the time they start their high school season. A lot of dudes just want to be done with the recruiting process so they can enjoy basketball. So we might be nearing decision time for guys like Chris Sinek, Shana Bayev, some of those others that we mentioned outside of Nate Ament. So we'll see about it. And, my guys might commit on Christmas Day, but then they wouldn't be able to sign until after the season in that signing period, which is risky because it kind of runs right in line with the transfer portal season as well. So the more you can get right now, the better, in my opinion.
That's Curtis Wilkerson of Inside Arkansas. You can catch out all of his great content with Inside Arkansas, as well as right here and Locked On Razorbacks podcast for the Pod at the Palace edition. Curtis, as always, appreciate it, man. And I'm sure we'll be catching up with you the next 5-star McDonald's All-American that Cal signs here very, very soon.
You got it, man. It's just a matter of time before it happens again.
We'll talk some Razorback football and what Sam Pittman had to say in his press conference yesterday here in a second. So stay with us on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, all you Razorback fans out there, you need to listen up, because right now you need to download the Roy app. You've heard us talk about Roy this season and how they are revolutionizing the NIL industry. Roy allows you, the fan, to have a say in who gets the NIL money. And here's what I absolutely love about Roy. You get your money back if that player transfers. Roy is helping us keep our team intact, and it's actually good for the game long term. Here's the thing, is that it's we've been able to help out a lot of different players this year. And for this particular player, I mean, we had Andrew Armstrong, we had Malachi Singleton, we had Braylon Russell, we had Metcalf, we had Devin Bale. We've had so many different people to choose from, and you can show your support for said players by depositing a little appreciation onto that player's account. To download that Roy app, it's very simple, because you can just go on your iPhone or on your Android, as you know, and download an app. Surely you understand that. I know you do. So download it today, and you can see exactly what you're checking out and what you're getting. Now let's spotlight the Roy Locked On Player of the Week for the Razorbacks. It's a bye week, so he didn't have any players playing, but I'm going to give it out to Hudson Clark, the no-fly zone. It's his final year. And we know that with the different appreciations that he had, and especially since he's one of the very few players that was on that team that Arkansas had when they beat Texas the first time around in 2021, we're going to give him a shout out. And so we're going to be throwing him some money in his account on Roy. Every contribution counts. $10, $20, it all adds up, and it's going to help your favorite players stay put. So join me and show Hudson Clark a little bit of love. Download the Roy app and join Roy.com today. Use promo code LOCKEDON. Every athlete from every team is there. No purchase necessary. Void where prohibited. Go to joinroy.com for full terms. Roy, support the players and change the game. All right, so moving on into the next segment of the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. We're going to do a little bit of discussing with what Sam Pittman had to say in his press conference today, because there were a few updates, especially when it comes to injuries. One of them being about Taylen Green. And Taylen has gone back and forth on a lot of different injuries. He's been banged up. He hasn't been full strength at times. So he's really crucial to get back. But it's not only him, but it's a few other players. Sam Pittman had a chance to talk about that, and here's what he had to say.
Practiced every day last week, and I believe that he'll be fine. Braxton's going to practice today. We'll see how long he lasts or if he can go for an extended period of time. I think that's June Causer's beat up a little bit. I think that's about it.
So Sam Pittman goes into a little bit of detail there, and basically what it comes down to this. It looks like Taylen Green's going to be practicing and will play. It looks like JaQuinden Jackson also, it wasn't mentioned there, but he did say earlier in the press conference will play or is going to be returning to practice and going to play. Jalen Braxton was the one that I was a little worried about because on the depth chart before the game, they always do that for the week leading up to the game. They put up a depth chart of game notes on a Monday. And on those game notes, there on the depth chart, there was no Jalen Braxton. So I was a little bit concerned. I was like, oh, geez, well, maybe he's not really going to play at all this year. But he did mention him there that he's going to be back at practice. Anton Junkaj. Braylon Russell he even mentioned was a little bit banged up, but he's going to be back. So is the team healthy? I wouldn't call them healthy, but the key players are going to be coming back for this one against Texas. So we'll do more diving into Texas later on into the week as far as the intense things about it. But speaking about Arkansas specifically, Arkansas has so much to really have an expectation of this weekend. Like they have to be able to do something, compete. That's not really all I'm asking for. I'm not expecting them to win, but I do hope that they actually show out and actually perform well against a really good Texas team. And to do that, you got to be able to have Taylen Green in. You got to be able to have JaQuinden Jackson. You got to be able to have Jalen Braxton. You got to have everybody you possibly can be on the team, be ready, be available. And it looks as if, at least from coming from Sam Pittman, that will be the case this time around. No guarantees on that. But they're also, for guys that have had to step up in particular positions like Malachi Singleton, I have some faith in Malachi that if Taylen wasn't 100% ready to go, that he could at least come in and do some stuff. Braylon Russell, kind of the same thing, all that. But it'll be nice to see the team back. Because if you think about it, we've seen Taylen Green, but JaQuinden Jackson, it's been a while since we've seen him, at least being at full strength. I want to say the LSU game was probably the last time, maybe even before that. So it'll be nice to have him back. Jalen Braxton, you haven't seen since the beginning of the season, like game 2. He's been out pretty much the entire year. So it'll be really good to see him back into the mix out there. So what's that going to look like? What's that going to mean? I don't know. But the excuses are done. You can't go out there and just, you got injuries and whatnot. No, nobody cares. If you got Taylen Green, if you got all these guys, you got a bye week that you've been able to prepare and work to prepare for this game against Texas. No excuses. You got to get the job done, plain and simple. I know that Sam Pittman has also been at times, I'm trying to be very careful on how I phrase this. At times, he's not been fully forthcoming with a lot of the reports on injuries. He may be very vague at times, or he may say one thing, but then it doesn't happen to the other. But that's why the injury reports come out. So it'll be interesting to see what this actually looks like, the team, and actually looks like when it's all said and done. But either way, I'm just hopeful. I'm just hopeful that they're going to be able to do something and showcase themselves, because this is the last SEC game at home, second to last game of the season. Last 2 have gone really badly, very badly, embarrassing fashion, especially this last one against Ole Miss. So if you want to be able to give Razorback fans who have spent a lot of their hard-earned money and time, and a lot of people are going to be coming in for this game because it is Texas after all, give them something. Just give them something. That's all I'm asking for. You got the pieces in place to be competitive, and I'm not going to predict Arkansas to beat Texas. But is Arkansas capable of it? Sure, because the SEC is wacky this year. I mean, Arkansas beat Tennessee. That's the only loss that Tennessee has this year is to Arkansas. Make it make sense. Kentucky's trash, and Ole Miss lost to them. Make it make sense. Texas A&M has been dominating a lot of teams this year, but they lost to South Carolina. Make it make sense. So none of it does. So who knows? Maybe this was a game that doesn't make sense. But as far as the injuries go, as far as the health of the team go, looks like they're going to be in pretty good shape. We'll talk about some bad news on the front of some recruiting, where Arkansas lost a key player for this upcoming class. We'll talk about that here in a second, so stay with us on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. All right, Razorback fans, you need to get it going and get geared up and get ready in the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sports book. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 on $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out all the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. All right, so final segment here on the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Arkansas lost one of their commitments of the 2025 class. And I've talked many times about high school classes, and I'm not as concerned about them or anything like that. But this is one in particular that's a little bit disappointing because it happens to be the kicker, Evan Noel, or Noel. I think it's Noel. But he's from St. Louis, Mississippi, and he was a, quote, 5-star kicker, which, by the way, I hate that so much. I hate just, oh, he's a 5-star kicker. I think you should be a 5-star or not. Like, if you're going to be a 5-star kicker, then you need to put them up there in the rest of the rankings. I just always bothered me when it's like, well, he's a 5-star kicker, but he's not a 5-star player. So just make him either a 5-star player overall, or just have kickers be 3 stars or something. I don't know. It's just really annoying to me. But still, really frustrating because now he has announced that he is committed to Florida. Not exactly ideal. He made national headlines earlier this season, scoring 24/7 Sports with a record-breaking 61-yard field goal. A lot of you remember that. He'd been committed to Scott Fountain and the Razorbacks since October 21st, and he initially chose the Hogs over scholarship from Ole Miss, but then Florida joined the race in late July. So now Arkansas loses out on him. It does a little switch. He even tweeted out, he said, I committed to Florida. Now, what's the reason behind this? Who really knows? A lot of times, want to throw out NIL, possibly, but it's just like, how much NIL is a kicker making? I'm not trying to hate on him or anything. It's if he's done a good job and everything, if he's worth it, then that's great. But it does make you kind of wonder about the timing. October 21st was not that long ago, folks. It was like, 2.5, 3 weeks ago? So it wasn't like this was just a shocking development that happened. Oh, well, see, I'm stupid. If I can just, read. It's 2023, so he's been committed for a year. My bad. Yeah, so in that case, the timing's not so weird. But it's still disappointing. And he's somebody that, Arkansas with the kicking issues that they've had, I don't even know if they're issues, but they're just inconsistent this year. Of course, had injuries to Ramsey, and now Shipley's come in, and Shipley can make some, but he's a 50-50 guy. I have about a 50-50 gut feeling anytime he lines up for a kick. So they needed to develop that. They needed to get better at that. They needed to have more than that, but that's just not going to be the case, at least not right now coming out. But still, disappointing. We'll see how it plays out. We'll see what the rest of the class looks like and see if it's kept intact. But there you have it. You lost. Yeah, you gained a 5-star in basketball, but you lost a 5-star in football. 5-star kicker, that is. But either way, appreciate each and every one of you listening and watching into the Locked On Razorbacks podcast. Be sure to like and subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or on Google Play. You can also get after me on Twitter at John Neighbors Show for any questions, comments, concerns that you may have, and we'll keep it going from there. Same podcast time, same podcast channel tomorrow afternoon. Have a great day, everybody. We'll see you then.